So what we've got here is a couple diagrams of a web application. First one is probably the sort of thing you're used to seeing. So you've got your Python Django backend hanging out in a cloud server somewhere. And you've got these very thick connections going out to your clients. So you've got these are typically from JavaScript in a web page, but it could be a Python requests call from the requests package. But whatever it is, it's an HTTP request is a pretty thick packet. It has a big header and it waits for the server to do all its processing. Like maybe for a chatbot, it needs to compute what it's going to say next. These can be really massive models. You've heard of like 70 or 100 billion parameter models that take a long time, take months to train, and take, if on a laptop, might take several minutes just to return a response. And that'll time out on many HTTP requests. But that's how it looks like if you're trying to do an HTTP request to serve up some data like chats for a chatbot back to some clients. And you got a bunch of people doing that simultaneously. And each one, your server has to process each one of them independently and chug hard on their stuff to get it back to them as soon as possible. Now let's move to Django channels or WebSockets. So WebSockets have been around for 10 years, or at least I've known about them for 10 years, and I've worked with developer teams that use them. Django channels has been around that long for sure as well. They're a much more lightweight thing. So that same request that came from somebody's office computer on their desktop, it sends a very lightweight packet of information. First, to set up the channel. So the very first one it sends will set up the channel, authenticate, and that'll have a token then that rides along with all the future requests. So in that HTTP request, I forgot to mention that. So you're going to authenticate and verify with a new token after every single request that this is still the same user, the CSRF token and the authentication token if the user is logged in somewhere. All of that has to be transmitted in order to maintain the encryption and maintain authentication of that packet during the session, during the request response cycle that can take multiple seconds. This request, this packet that goes out and that authentication, it happens in typically in a millisecond. The data can end up in a database on your server in a millisecond. If you're using some highly optimized system with CDN, a content delivery network. So like Supabase, for instance, is the open source version of Firebase. And these are the kinds of things that are typically used for chatbots. And it has a Postgres database that will receive a packet, like a text message over a WebSocket and store it in your database all within a millisecond. And then that can trigger anything you would like in your Django app. And then it can spontaneously push that message out to whoever needs it. It doesn't have to wait for somebody to send a request, to go in and poll the server and get the data that it needs. That message will instantly appear on the user's device if they need it, if they have subscribed to that channel, if they have already connected to that WebSocket. So typically modern applications like Slack or Discord or even Twitter, if you're running on the WebSockets API, those will establish a WebSocket connection and then maintain it throughout while you have that app running. And so until you close the browser, that WebSocket will be up and your browser is just waiting for any pushes. That's why you can get notifications on your browser window when things happen on any of those apps. So that's WebSockets in a heartbeat. So why would you ever want to use HTTP? Well, you definitely don't want to use it for chat. And so if you want to see a much better presentation on how all this works, you want to visit, I forget her name, but in 2020, there was a really good DjangoCon talk by a woman about, and she titled her talk, Real-Time Chat with Django Channels. And that's what you're going to look for. And she walks through step by step the tutorial on the Django project documentation website. So, and it took me and someone else who was uninitiated about 30 minutes to go through the entire tutorial and set up an actual chat bot, not a chat bot, but a chat room like Slack or something within a Django application. I'll show you what that looks like. We haven't actually, I'll go ahead and run server it so you can see what it looks like here on my local machine. It's not currently deployed to our Carrie chatbot, but it will be soon. And we'll of course have Carrie be one of those participants in the channel, sort of like Slackbot in your Slack. Okay, let's work on Nudgers, the name of the app, the pro-social or the proactive side of Carrie. Let's see, Python managed by run server should do it. I'll show you the code as well. Once we have a chance to interact with it, if it works, then I'll show you the code that's being implemented to make this work. So I just learned of a really cool feature in Ubuntu. You can rename multiple files. So you've taken a dozen screenshots like I did for this talk, and I'll show you those screenshots in a second because it's another side story. But there is a let's see if the chatbot's working. Oh, we use it's not. Is there even an endpoint called chat async? Chat -async. There we go. Okay, so the first thing when you're establishing a channel is you need to give it a name. And there's also the concept of a sub channel. So even when all of your applications are subscribed to the same channel, they can be subscribed to what's called a separate group within that WebSocket. But we're going to give that group a name. We're going to call this Pug for the Python user group. This should be interacting with the chatbot, and it's not, and so it's not currently working. But it created the room, so that created a URL. You can see how fast that happened. We switched over to, well, I guess it's local, so there's no big deal there. But let's see what happens if I try to answer the question that should have appeared there. Okay, it's not actually working, but let's look at the code to see how. Let's see what would be the best way to do this. Probably the best way would be to show you. I'll show you what we've got. So this is the request to create the room, and so that's just a template that was there, the view that you got. By the way, WebSockets requires you to use, let's check out Nudger and see there's a couple things you need to do to your app to make it work with WebSockets. The first one is you need to, of course, add whatever app you've created to your installed apps. You also need to install Django channels, and when you're importing it, it's just called channels, and it becomes just, actually, this is a really important thing. Don't pip install Django channels. Pip install channels. They are two separate packages, and if you try to import Django channels or try to import even channels after installing Django channels, you'll get the wrong one, and it will not work. At least it won't work with any of the recent versions. Anything greater than Django 3, it will not work. So for Django 4, what we're using, we needed to install channels. Not sure what the whole rigmarole and politics was of that, but anyway, there are now 2 channels packages. So once that's done, then you can go to the WSGI. You're no longer using WSGI to serve up your app. So this is what you would run with Gunicorn or Run Server. Instead, we need to serve up something that asynchronously. So all of these are asynchronous requests. You'll notice that the views are all preceded by the keyword async, and they have the keyword await. This is the syntax in Python for asynchronous function calls. Anyway, so this is you need to use your ASGI rather than your WSGI in order to serve up all of the requests. Fortunately, ASGI and this whole web protocol of WebSockets works fine and transparently alongside HTTP requests. So you can put all your views can still be served up with either whether they're HTTP views or whether they're WebSocket views. WebSockets are Django channels, HTTP are the conventional ones, including HTTPS. These are just the normal request response ones you're used to. Sure, I'm out of time, but got one more thing. Let's find an actual def consumer. Actually, let's look for the consumer. And let's look in, not the talks, let's look in Nudger. Let's make it maybe, nope, that's not going to help me. There we go. This is the kind of thing you want to create. Oh, maybe it is working at a different endpoint called chat. This is the one that we just put up to, not hat, but chat. This is the one we put up. Let's try Pug again. Great. Let's see if it works before I say great. No, it's not working. Maybe so normally you would be able to put up, so two people could visit that same room, that same URL, and send messages to each other, and they would be logged here in the chat text box. Not working, but we're getting really close. We're getting a lot closer than the other one was. This is what the chat consumer that's interacting with that at the moment. So there's the connect that happens when you first try to establish the WebSocket. Here's a disconnect that you need to always have in all of your WebSockets. The init calls connect, and the close calls disconnect. Those are happening in the background. And then you create consumers that are used for whatever actions you want. So like if you want to receive messages, or if you want to, so these are two different consumers that we have of the packets of data that are coming in across this channel. It's sort of like subscribing to a magazine or a pub sub queue, if you're familiar with that, like RabbitMQ or ZeroMQ. This is sort of a pub sub way of interacting with requests. So you just create a consumer that consumes the stuff from any one of those endpoints, which means a channel name and a group name, and then you can consume the text data that came across there, usually a JSON packet. That's it for WebSockets. I've got some interesting related notes as I was trying to trick a really famous chatbot into giving me its source code. But that's I've got some screenshots of that. It was entertaining. But that's all I've got for the official talk today.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, thanks a lot, Hobson.
Cool.
That was really interesting. I'm very interested in Django channels. I've seen a couple use cases for it, but I've never like run into one myself where I'm like, oh, I should use this. So I haven't just had a chance to dive deep.
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry.
Hobson, is that basically a chat server, what you're calling a chat bot?
Yes, exactly. It's a chat room. It's just a place for multiple people or agents. Any of them could be bots or humans, doesn't really matter.
And does it have features like people can share PDFs or drop things in or stuff like that?
No, it's not an actual application. It's just a prototype for demonstrating how WebSockets work. It's just it's not an application at all. but yes, it is used. It is a very efficient way to build such an application, and that's what we're going to eventually do.
I see. And it's more complex than just a file being appended to, because like you said, with sockets, people can be hitting return at the end, you know, and it has to kind of aggregate this text in a nice way without crashing. Is that why where the sockets might help?
WebSockets is the real-time effect. So so it allows it to only send the text, basically. That WebSocket, once you've established the channel, what actually goes out across the internet is just the characters that you just typed. And in fact, many WebSockets will send it out and word by word, rather than sending it out in a full packet for the entire sentence or the entire line. It doesn't even wait for a send button to be hit. It will send it out live as you're typing it, like Google search does. And so it's not storing all that autocomplete information in your browser. It's not, you don't have all the possible web requests that you might be typing into a search engine. So it's sending out character by character through a WebSocket. So that's what I was going to mention to David. That's a good application for you. I know you have a search box, and so and it may already be implemented within the Elasticsearch API that you're using and whatever view you're serving up for that search box. But the HTML and JavaScript may be using WebSockets. But that's a really good application for it if you end up doing web search or text search in your own Django app.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks.
Or any field where you want to do autocomplete.
Cool. Sorry,
Trey
one
had
more
two-
question was there?
Trey had 2 questions in the chat.
Yeah, I didn't catch whether this was something that it sounded like something that you're going to use publicly. I didn't know if you could share what you were actually using it for, though.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's for Carrie, the chatbot that you control, the teachable chatbot that's completely private and virtual, the virtual assistants that actually assists. So if you go to carrie.ai, we have like 5 different applications, Django applications, that are all coming together to make this all possible. Several different volunteers are working on different ones. I have one called ConvoScript. I don't know which of these are actually deployed. So this real-time chat that we're working on right now, that's going to be the actual bread and butter of it. That's going to be the sort of search engine / virtual assistant. ConvoScript will allow you to compose your own chatbot. So you can create an actual dialogue tree. And you can compose great, and this will not make much sense to you unless you're familiar with conversation design, but basically we're just creating a node in a graph and an edge. And this was created by Vishvesh Bhatt, a UCSD student here. And let's see if it actually even, oh no.
But you're not sharing.
You're not sharing.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Maria, you're familiar with this bot, and Maria's not at all happy with this because she's got a really slick user interface for composing these dialogue trees. And this is a very clunky but fully functional one in terms of given the developer complete control over everything. Let's try that again. So I'm going to create a state called welcome. And then I'm going to add a new user statement called great. So this is what the user is going to say in response to that. And that's going to send them to a welcome great state. And let's see, that doesn't seem to have worked. Oh, there we go. So I can send it back. I can send him back to the welcome message, or I can send him on to the new one that we just created, welcome great. And let's make this text a little better. Don't know if that's going to actually save anything. And so now if I go to let's see if this actually does it. So now I can go to the welcome. Great. Awesome. Glad to hear it. So this is what the bot would say. And then all of this will then be created. Anyway, let's see what, and this will all then create a YAML file that defines that dialogue tree that can then be executed by Carrie. So this is the teachable part of Carrie that allow you to create a dialogue tree, well, sort of like a phone tree that you would have in, but it seems like about half of our students in the internship, they all want to create a virtual assistant that can help them with their mental health, help them manage their anxiety and workload in school or at work, help, as Maria has done, I often want to help her extend the capabilities of Cindy, our chatbot for imposter syndrome. So this whole suite of tools is going to allow our interns and volunteers to build virtual assistants that help them with the things that are important to them. So that was ConvoScript. We talked about the real-time chat. What other cool things are part of that? Oh, there's a machine-assisted intent labeler. So when you're walking through a tree like this, it's hard for the machine to know what you just said. Like if you use synonyms for words. So these dialogue trees need to have deep comprehension of what you said. So what we have done is, and you need to train it on what you mean. Like when someone says hello, there are 1,000 different ways to say hello, like hi and howdy and sup, S-U-P. And so you give it a few examples and then it will learn to recognize that intent. And so we call that an intent when you categorize a bunch of things that people say into one clump. And so we built a tool, and we're currently building 2 tools actually for help using machine intelligence, using natural language processing to assist the human labeler to characterize and categorize all of the things that people say when they're interacting with your bot, because we're maintaining several bots. Maria, I should say, is maintaining several bots, and she's getting a lot of dialogue that she needs to classify. And so we need tools to help make that labeling a lot easier and then incorporate that back into the chatbot logic. So yes, it's all open source, and yes, it'll all be part of an app. It's a very long answer to a very simple question.
I love this aspect you touched on about machine, the chatbot learning from you, like something that's not published, or some kind of, block that you live on, or some kind of fraternity has some code that they speak in. Can you teach it to ask good questions of the human so that it learns faster?
Oh, we haven't built that sort of advanced sort of thing that they're working on at DeepMind, where it asks you smart questions. But we have something kind of similar to that, where it presents to you the edge cases among all the things people have said. Like somebody says something that doesn't make any sense to the chatbot, then it will surface that as an unrecognized intent, and then you can read it as a human and try to figure out what it means, and then try to classify it or create some new response to that thing that the user said. That's the kind of machine assistance we're talking about.
But definitely things like acronyms and things like that, it might go, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. All that slang that users do, or all the different ways that people figure out how to curse at you, they love to mess with chatbots. And yeah, so I met somebody at the San Diego Tech Coffee who tricked Mitsuku chatbot into revealing its source code by insulting it viciously. But anyway, anyway, that's a talk for another night about how being antisocial with a chatbot is fair game in this world where chatbots are manipulating you.